Good afternoon. I've been asked to clarify why EuPC decided to write this open letter to the European Commission regarding the postponement of the Single-Use Plastics Directive implementation, more particularly at national level. The reason is quite simple. Today, the COVID-19 crisis is asking industries and authorities full attention to fight this crisis. Single-use plastics directive has been a big controversial debate in 2018, 2019, and is still struggling today in the implementation phase on defining exactly what single-use plastics are and looking into each specific market. Consultants are working on this and need quite some input from the authorities and more particularly from the packaging producers themselves in order to fine-tune all these criteria and these definitions. We believe that it's time to put a hold to this work right now, not to forget about it, but to make sure that the next 12 months, which are going to be crucial, we will have all the weapons to fight this COVID-19 crisis. It's quite obvious that before any vaccine is going to be found, people will still struggle to get into the fight for this crisis. And it's extremely important that we are able to continue to use single-use plastics as such. Today you have countries where even plastics bags are being used to replace gloves, which can't be purchased anymore in Europe. And which are single-use products. Our industries today are in a need to change production lines in order to produce masks, to produce gloves, to produce any kind of medical equipment to fight this crisis. We need the industry to have a relief in order to be able to continue doing this. 12 months is certainly not going to be the disaster for the Single-Use Plastics Directive to further go and reach its goal. Its goal was basically to reduce littering. We also believe that it is much more convenient to address also the littering aspect and not only the material as such. Behavior of people is of extreme importance in this activity, and the COVID crisis has learned us many things about people's behavior. One of them, of course, is also littering, and more than ever, we believe that a regulation on anti-littering behavior should be imposed by the authorities to handle this thing. Can't believe that even in the future we could find masks and gloves littered in the streets in the next months to come, and then suddenly we would start banning these products as such. So we also were very worried about the fact that the European Commission had not done a proper impact assessment, in particularly also on the looking into the alternatives on single-use plastics which were on the market or which were supposed to come on the market, which are not always better from an environmental point of view and certainly not from a health and safety perspective. So the reason why we wrote this letter is because we want to concentrate on health and safety as a priority number one, at least for the next 12 months, and rebuild whatever needs to be rebuilt afterwards. It is quite important for industry to get that stability, to make sure that they continue to do all their efforts that they have been doing since the start of this crisis. I think that authorities will need much more resources in building up and the recovery of their economies is going to be in the forefront. So this is basically why that letter was sent also to several commissioners, because in the past the European Commission, specifically on the Single-Use Plastic Directive, has been working in a silo movement where the environmental consequences justified were taken into account, but did not take into account the whole picture about the implications. We really feel that there's going to be a loss of the internal market for single-use plastics, and of course health and safety aspects need to be reconsidered as well. So these are the elements that we have put in the letter, and we do believe that the Commission should certainly take them into consideration in postponing some of the work. That doesn't mean that industry is not ready to pick up the challenge of circularity. I think that the industry is very much engaged in driving the circularity of the plastics industry. We have engaged in the Circular Plastics Alliance, reaching this 10 million tons of use of recycled plastics in new products is an extreme ambitious target. And driving circularity of the plastics industry will remain on the agenda with the whole circular economy package of the European Commission. I think the pressure will remain and should remain to make sure that we are working towards these goals. Having said that, yes, we also feel that there has been a change in the hearts of the people. Until the month of February, I think working in the plastics industry was no longer fun. It's evident today that consumers are turning again their hearts to this material. Plastics are needed. Plastics packaging in particular are extremely important in order to secure the full food chain, which could have been broken up during this crisis. In the internal market in Europe, it is essential that this is not happening. So our companies have been seen as essential activities, essential sectors to contribute to the good functioning of the internal market. We have been opening quite some borders in order to make sure that food packaging was going and medical devices were moving from one country to the other without interrupting this supply chain. That also means that plastics are today badly needed in order to fight this COVID-19 crisis. But at the same time, the industry will need the consumer in order to make sure that the circularity is going to be achieved and that proper disposal will happen with these products now and in the future. So all by all, the letter is about working together to make sure that we do find the solutions, the appropriate solutions, and that we work in this positive atmosphere as it is essential in today's activity. So that's basically the reason why we wanted to highlight our concerns.